everybody, my name is Shonda Ashby, and this is my Integrating Language Arts and Social Studies by Using Children's Literature project that I prepared. We were supposed to select 3 different books, and my first book choice was John Paul, George and Ben, written by Lane Smith. I found this to be a really interesting book. It's hard to find children's literature that is focused around history, that is interesting and relates to them. And I found this one to be really, it's really a cute book. It's a cute story. It tells about 5 different Americans that played an important part in our history, and as they could have been in their youth. So this is kind of a cute little way to teach children about what these people did and what they're known for in our American history. So I decided to use this one. I wrote down this book is a wonderfully written and illustrated children's book. It tells us some important Americans in our history books, which are John Hancock, Paul Revere, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, as they might have been as children. It tells them one important achievement or event that they are mainly remembered by. The author helps make this book relatable to the young audience by presenting each man as they might have been like as a child themselves. And I decided to try to come up with social studies concepts from this book. I wrote that students will learn about 5 famous Americans. They will understand their achievements and contributions to American history. They will understand the role that they played in America's independence as the Sons of Liberty. Students will use previous knowledge of these men to decipher how true the story actually is, or if some things are exaggerated. And for additional instruction, students may be required to continue researching these great men by using additional books, including nonfiction pieces. Then I went on in my language art concept. My first concept, I decided to create an acrostic poem. To use the book, I would begin by having the children create an acrostic poem. Acrostic poems are poems that are created by taking a key word or name and writing it vertically down their paper. They will then choose one of the men's first or last names and will use that as their key word to create their poem with. They will write facts that they have learned about that man in their poem. And I found an example of acrostic poem for George Washington for his last name. It goes, wealthy Virginian who became the Army Commander-in-Chief. He saw the best way to win and held out against the British, inspired his soldiers to fight. Never one to give up, he was a gentleman and a leader who triumphed at Yorktown. Our first president, he became a national icon, the first. For my second concept for language arts integration, I decided to have the children do a Venn diagram. Venn diagrams are wonderful assets to teaching and are used as graphic organizers to help children collect their thoughts about a certain thing. This book can be integrated into a language arts concept by having children take 2 of the men mentioned in the story and comparing and contrasting the 2 from what they have read and from other information and resources they might obtain from other books. In this one I did an example of a Venn diagram. I chose George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. I put that George Washington helped win the war. He also became the country's first president. Benjamin Franklin invented the bifocals, Franklin stove, and lightning rod. He wanted the national bird to be the turkey, and he was extremely clever. And for both of them, I put they were both in the Sons of Liberty. They both helped develop our country, and both signed the Declaration of Independence. Okay, for my second book choice, I chose Brother Eagle, Sister Sky. This is actually written from a speech that Chief Seattle wrote concerning it was when his men were signing over their land to the white people. And he wrote a well-written story about how we need to take care of our land and what we need to do for it. I put that this wonderful story is illustrated by Susan Jeffers and comes from Chief Seattle's message to the white men that were buying the lands of his people. In this story, he questions how man can own the land. He also reminds us how, even though the earth takes care of us, how we are so careless in slowly destroying it. For my social studies concepts from this book, I thought that this book can be a wonderful asset in teaching different social studies concepts. Teachers can use it as an aid in teaching about the Indian Wars. This book can also be used in helping students learn about the different Indian tribes. Students can research such tribes as the Choctaw, Cherokee, Navajo, Iroquois, and Sioux for additional instruction. The message in this book can also be used to help teach children about conservation of our environment. For my language arts concept, the first concept I created was a letter to the author. I put that the students are going to create a letter addressed to Chief Seattle. They will set up their work as a formal letter and will use correct letter format with a return address, greeting, body, closing, and signature. They will write to Chief Seattle and will tell them what they thought of his address to the white people. Students will share their thoughts about what they think about Chief Seattle and his fight to save the planet. They will also include their opinions of what they believe we should do in order to save our planet. Then on my second concept I created, I wanted the children to do a persuasive paper. I put that the students are going to use the story in Chief Seattle's words in order to write a persuasive paper. They will write a paper telling people why it is or why it is not important to save our Earth. Students will inform their readers what their opinion is about Chief Seattle's words and why they feel that this is important to or not to conserve the environment with statements to support their beliefs. Students will begin by brainstorming and creating a web cluster to help organize their ideas. They will then construct a rough draft of the beginning, middle, and end. Students will then conduct a self-edit and then a peer edit of the paper. Once editing is complete, students will write their final draft. Then, for my third book choice, I chose The Flag We Love. This is by Pam Munoz Ryan. It's illustrated by Ralph Macchiello. I hope I got that right. And this is a wonderful written book. It's well illustrated. It's also very lyrical. It's a poem and talks about the history of our flag and why it's important in our society. So I put that this book is a wonderful lyrical journey through the history of the American flag. And this book, with its wonderful illustrations, helps inform its readers of the importance the American flag plays in our history and in society. So, what I decided to do with this book, I wanted to teach the social studies concept. One concept that can be taught with the aid of this book is the history and importance of the American flag in our daily life. The flag means more than just the cloth it is made of. Children can learn and participate in a class discussion about what they think it means to be an American and what it means to them. This book can also help provide an opener for a discussion about citizenship and what it means to be a good citizen in today's society. Then, for my language arts concept, for my first concept, I decided to have the children do an interview. I wanted them to find a veteran or an active member of one of the branches of the armed forces. This can be a family friends, church members, anybody that fits the necessary criteria. I want the students to ask standard questions that will be given. They will also be required to come up with 3 individual questions on their own that they will have to ask that person. My given questions would include such things as, why did you want to serve our country? What do you think it means to be an American? And what does the flag mean to you? Students will then use the information that they gathered and create a biography about the person they interviewed. For my second concept, I wanted the students to write a report. The students are going to be asked to write a report about what they think it means to be an American. They will be asked to brainstorm, create a rough draft, perform a self-edit, and a peer edit on the paper, and then create a final copy. Students will begin by creating a cluster diagram of different ideas about what it means to be an American to them. They will then write a rough draft. After they finish, they will then look over and make any necessary corrections to their paper. They will then work with a partner and switch papers and edit each other's paper. Once the paper looks correct, they will then write their final copy and decorate a cover sheet with patriotic decor. And that's all I have for my 3 different books and incorporating them into language arts and social studies. So thank you for watching.